Most of the people that are watching this video have probably already made up their mind. They've searched on Zillow, they've watched YouTube videos, they've read Reddit threads, and somewhere along the way, they landed on one of these two cities, Cape Coral or Fort Myers. And they just need someone to confirm that they're right. So here's what I'm going to do in this video that nobody else is probably going to do. I'm not going to tell you Cape Coral is better. I mean, even though I live here. And I'm not going to tell you Fort Myers is better. What I'm going to do is tell you exactly which type of buyer wins in Cape Coral and exactly which type of buyer wins in Fort Myers. So if you're looking at Cape Coral and Fort Myers right now, the conventional wisdom sounds something like this. Fort Myers is the bigger city with more to do, more amenities, more of a real city feel. And Cape Coral is the suburban waterfront alternative. Think canals, boats, and a quieter pace. And you pick based on your lifestyle and your budget. And honestly, that's not wrong, but it's so surface level that it's almost useless when you're trying to make a six-figure decision about where to plant your entire life. So here's what I've come to believe after years of working both sides of the Caloosahatchee. There are four different distinct buyer profiles in this market, and each of those profiles has a city that objectively serves them better. And when you know which profile you are, this decision stops being hard. I'm Jamie Kolev with the Kolev Group here in Cape Coral, Florida, and I sell real estate on both sides of the river. I watch both markets weekly, and I've helped buyers find homes in Fort Myers, Cape Coral, and beyond. And I've seen firsthand what separates the buyers who thrive from the ones who wish they'd dug deeper before they closed. So here's what we're covering today. We'll look at the size and variety each city actually offers, what your dollar really buys in both markets, the job picture and what it means for your commute, the hidden costs almost nobody researches before they buy, the lifestyle matchup, the waterfront picture, and then the verdict. 4 buyer profiles, 2 cities, 1 honest answer. So if you want to skip to a specific section because you've done a lot of research, timestamps are in the description, but I'd encourage you to watch all of it because the section you think doesn't apply to you might be the one that changes your decision. So let's start with the things that trip up almost every out-of-state buyer who look at these two cities side by side. When most people compare these two cities on a map, their gut reaction is this. Fort Myers is the city, Cape Coral is the suburb. And if you're basing that on feel, on the presence of a downtown, on the number of restaurants and shops and things happening, I'll be honest, you're not wrong. Fort Myers has the River District. It has Gateway, which is a 3,000-acre master planned community with a Boston Red Sox spring training facility, major corporate employers, and a golf course country club. It has Florida Gulf Coast University, Lee Health, the region's dominant hospital system, and Southwest Florida International Airport, RSW. When you drive around Fort Myers, it feels like a functioning city with real infrastructure. So here's the part that will surprise you. Cape Coral is actually the bigger city. Cape Coral covers 120 square miles of land. Fort Myers only covers about 40. Cape Coral has 200,000 residents and climbing. Fort Myers sits around 95,000. So by landmass and population, Cape Coral is actually the largest city between Tampa and Miami. Why does Fort Myers feel bigger? Because Fort Myers is denser. It has a commercial and employment core that's concentrated, the River District, the Daniels Corridor, the Gateway Business Park. That density creates this perception of a bigger, more complete city. Cape Coral, by contrast, was master planned from the ground up in the late 1950s as a low-density waterfront community. So think wider streets, single-family homes, canals between neighborhoods. Have you seen the map? It was never designed to feel urban. That was the entire point. And the people who built it weren't building a city. They were building a lifestyle. So what does this mean for you practically? Fort Myers will give you more concentrated lifestyle variety within a smaller footprint. More walkable areas, more commercial density, more of all the traditional city experience. Cape Coral will give you more space, more water, more land per dollar, and a lifestyle that's oriented outward towards nature rather than inward towards commercial infrastructure. Neither of these is a flaw. They're just different design philosophies. But if you walk into this decision expecting Cape Coral to function like Fort Myers, you are going to be very disappointed. And if you walk in expecting Fort Myers to give you the waterfront everywhere lifestyle of Cape Coral, same problem. The illusion is thinking these two cities are competing for the same buyer, because they are not. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack for the rest of this video. But before we get into lifestyle and waterfront, we need to talk about what your money actually buys you in each city, because the numbers are going to look similar on the surface, and what they hide underneath might change how you think about this thing entirely. Now, on paper, these two cities look almost identical in price. Cape Coral's median sale price is currently sitting around $365,000 to $375,000, depending on which month you're looking at. Fort Myers hovers in a similar range, roughly $340,000 to $365,000. Similar, right? Here's the problem with that comparison. Medians flatten everything. They don't tell you what's inside those numbers, and in these two markets, what's inside is very different. In Fort Myers, that median price represents a market with significant range on both ends. You've got entry-level options, so condos, smaller townhomes, villas, coming in under $300,000 in areas like San Carlos Park near FGCU. You've got mid-range suburban neighborhoods in the $350,000 to $500,000 band, and on the upper end, you have communities like Gulf Harbor Yacht and Country Club, where the waterfront estates push well past $2 million. The Fort Myers price spectrum is genuinely wide. Now, in Cape Coral, the price spectrum is a little bit narrower, but it's tied more tightly to one variable, and that is water access. A dry lot home in Cape Coral in the low to mid 300s is a solid buy. A freshwater canal home steps up from there, and a direct Gulf access home, one where your boat is literally parked in your backyard and you can be on open water in minutes, commands a significant premium, often $500,000 to $800,000, and then you have luxury builds up from there, depending on the location and the canal width. So here's the real question that your dollar is answering. What do you want your home to do for your life? If you want maximum choice, if you want the flexibility to find a condo near a university, a golf community estate, a suburban starter home, luxury riverfront property, Fort Myers gives you that menu. It's a bigger, wider market with more product types. Now, if what you're looking for is the best waterfront to price ratio in Florida, if you want to wake up to the canal in your backyard, own a dock, and live on the water at the price that you would get for an inland home almost anywhere else, Cape Coral's sweet spot is in that $400,000 to $600,000 range. It's nearly impossible to beat. This is why I always tell buyers, don't compare the medians. Compare what you get at your specific budget for your specific lifestyle. Because at $400,000 in Fort Myers, you're probably buying a really nice suburban home in a solid neighborhood. However, at $400,000 in Cape, if you know where to look, you might be buying a freshwater canal home with a dock and a place for your boat. And those are not the same purchase. And only one of them gives you something that the other city structurally cannot. Now, here's where I need to talk about something most buyers never research until they close. Because what your dollar buys on paper is not the whole story. And there is a hidden cost in Cape Coral that can change your math significantly if you're not looking in the right places. So when you search for homes on Zillow or Redfin, you see the price, you see the photos, you see the square footage. What you almost never see is the line items that can cost a Cape Coral property owner tens of thousands of dollars that have nothing to do with the home itself. And it's called the Utility Expansion Project, or UEP. And if you're buying in Cape Coral, particularly in the northern half of the city above Pine Island Road, you need to understand this before you make an offer. So here's a little background information. As I said, Cape Coral was originally developed as a low-density community, which meant many homes were built on well and septic systems rather than city utilities. But as the city has grown, it's been systematically running city water, sewer, and irrigation lines out to these areas. The cost of that expansion gets passed to the property owners in these areas in the form of special assessments to their taxes. So as of 2025, the North 1 UEP assessment for a standard residential lot is approximately $32,000 to $35,000. That covers water, sewer, and irrigation lines. However, it does not include the connection fees, and those can be another $3,000 to $4,000 for the plumber, the septic abandonment permit, the water meter, and the deposit. So we're talking about a potential $35,000 to $40,000 cost that hits your tax bill if you're in an unconnected northern quadrant. Now, here's the nuance because this isn't a reason to avoid Cape Coral, it's a reason to know exactly what you're buying. The southern quadrants of Cape Coral, the southwest and southeast sections, are largely already connected to city utilities. Many of those assessments have already been paid off by prior owners. The northern quadrants, northeast and northwest, are where the active UEP work is underway or upcoming. A good buyer's agent should be pulling the assessment status on every Cape Coral property you're considering. If yours isn't, you better ask, because buying a home in North Cape without knowing the assessment status is like buying a car without checking if it comes with monthly payments attached to it. Fort Myers doesn't have this issue. City utilities are established throughout the city. So when you buy in Fort Myers, your utility infrastructure is already there. It's baked into whatever you're paying for, and there are no surprise assessment bills arriving a year after closing. Now, this doesn't make Cape Coral the wrong choice because properties that receive city utilities typically see an uptick in their value because buyers prefer city water over wells and the infrastructure improvement is real. But you need to go in with your eyes wide open. The $375,000 Cape Coral listing that looks like a deal might look differently once you factor in a $35,000 assessment if you're not asking the right questions. All right, look, I just walked you through something that most buyers find out after they close, not before. So if you want the full breakdown of the Cape Coral market, including information about these assessment areas, what neighborhoods to focus on for the best value, we put together a Cape Coral relocation guide that covers all of it. It's free and the link is in the description, so go grab it. Now that we understand the cost picture on both sides, let's talk about the thing that drives most people's initial search: where you're going to be working and what that means for where you're actually going to live. So if you're relocating from out of state, there's a question underneath the city comparison that most people don't ask directly. Where are the jobs and how does that affect where I should live? The answer in this metro is straightforward. Fort Myers is the employment hub. It's where the majority of employers are concentrated. Southwest Florida International Airport, RSW, is in Fort Myers, and it served over 11 million passengers in 2025. Florida Gulf Coast University is there. Lee Health, the dominant hospital system in Lee County, is headquartered there. The Daniels Corridor and Gateway Business Park house major corporate employers, including Gartner and Comcast. So if you're working in this region, the odds are strong that your job is in or near Fort Myers. So what does that mean for the commute? Cape Coral is connected to Fort Myers by two bridges over the Caloosahatchee River, the Cape Coral Bridge and the Midpoint Memorial Bridge. Technically, there's a third one that connects North Fort Myers to downtown Fort Myers as well. So in off-peak hours, you're looking at a 15 to 20-minute drive from most of Cape Coral into central Fort Myers. But in season traffic, during the morning and afternoon rush hours, that number climbs. The average one-way commute in Lee County is approximately 42 minutes, and that average is pulled up significantly by the Cape Coral to Fort Myers bridge crossing. If you're working locally and commuting daily, that is a real consideration. 5 days a week, morning and afternoon, across a bridge that backs up seasonally. Not a deal breaker for most people, but it needs to be in your math. Now, here's where this flips entirely. If you're a remote worker, retired or semi-retired, your commute doesn't exist. And if the commute doesn't exist, you're making a pure lifestyle decision. You're asking, where do I want to live? Not where is it practical to live given my job? And this is one of the sharpest dividing lines between the two buyer profiles in this market. If you need proximity to Fort Myers employment, you need to seriously weigh that bridge crossing before you fall in love with a Canal home in Cape Coral, or at least try to stay on the east side of Cape Coral. If you've already cut the commute cord, either through retirement, remote work, or a lifestyle that doesn't require daily driving, then living in Cape Coral doesn't cost you anything in time or productivity. It only gives you more. So I'm going to say Fort Myers wins for the local commuter, but Cape Coral wins for everyone who's already free. So we've talked about size, price, hitting costs, and commutes. Now I want to get into what most people lead with, the lifestyle question. Because this is where those two cities genuinely diverge in ways that aren't about money at all. So let me paint you two pictures and see which one feels more like your life. Picture number one, you live in Fort Myers. On a Friday night, you walk a few blocks down or take a quick taxi to the River District. Brick paved streets, historic buildings, rooftop bars with views of the Caloosahatchee. You grab a drink at a waterfront restaurant, maybe catch a show, maybe end the night at the Sky Bar 12 stories above the river. On the weekends, you drive out to the Edison and Ford Winter Estates, catch the monthly art walk on First Street, or spend a morning at one of the community events in Gateway. And when your friends are flying in from out of state to go visit the beach, they land at RSW and you just have a 20-minute ride to pick them up. Now picture two, you live in Cape Coral. Friday afternoon, you walk to the end of your backyard, step onto your dock, and take the boat out for a sunset cruise on the canal. You anchor at a waterfront bar accessible only by water. Hello, Slipaway and Bimini Basin. Saturday morning, you kayak the chains of lakes in your neighborhood. Sunday, you load the boat and head down the Caloosahatchee out to the Gulf, anchoring off Sanibel, probably by noon. Your neighbors wave from their docks, you've got dolphins in the canal out back, and the only traffic you're dealing with is on the water. Both of those lives are real. Both of them exist in Southwest Florida right now. And neither one of them is objectively better than the other, but they are dramatically different. And people often discover which one they actually wanted only after they've moved here. Now, Fort Myers wins for the buyer who moved to Florida for the energy of the place. Walkability, culture, nightlife, access to events, the feeling of being unplugged but plugged into something at the same time. It wins for the buyer who wants their social life to happen outside their home, in shared spaces with other people around. Cape Coral wins for the buyer who moved to Florida for the water. Not to be near the water, but to be on the water. The buyer whose ideal Friday night involved their boat, their dock, and a sunset. Not a reservation, not a valet. The buyer whose lifestyle is built around the outdoors, the rhythm of the tides, and the specific kind of quiet that only exists when you're watching the water from your own backyard. Now, I want to be really honest with you here for a second. If you move to Florida and you don't care about the water, Cape Coral is going to feel a lot like a suburb for not a lot of payoff. But if the water is why you're here, if the canal lifestyle, the boating, the ability to keep your boat at your home and be in open water within minutes, that is Cape Coral's entire identity. And it's one that no amount of downtown development in Fort Myers can replicate. Which brings me to the point I've been building towards since the beginning of this video. The one that I think is the real answer to this question, and it comes down to something physical. Something that was built into this land over 65 years ago and can't be duplicated anywhere else on Earth. Fort Myers has waterfront. It has good waterfront. The Caloosahatchee River runs through it, and the River District sits right on the water. There are neighborhoods in Fort Myers with river views, with boat access, with marinas nearby. I don't want to undersell that fact. For the buyer who wants a waterfront experience in Fort Myers, there's options out there. But here is the number that puts everything into perspective. Cape Coral has over 400 miles of navigatable water. More than 400 miles. That makes it the city with the most canal mileage than any other city in the world. And yes, more than Venice, Italy. And not just more than Venice, dramatically more. This isn't even a close comparison. So what does 400 miles of waterway actually mean in practical terms? It means that an extraordinary percentage of Cape Coral's homes have direct or indirect water access. It means the canal isn't a luxury add-on, it's actually baked into the fundamental layout of this city. The canals aren't there because some developer thought it would sell well. They were engineered into the land from the beginning as the city's primary organizing infrastructure. Stormwater management, irrigation, flood control, recreation, the canal system serves all of it simultaneously. And the variety within that system is significant. Direct Gulf access canals, where you can put your boat out in your backyard and reach the Gulf of Mexico with no restrictions, command the highest premiums and the strongest resale. Indirect access canals go under bridges, but still get you to open Gulf water. Freshwater canals, part of the chain of lake systems, are landlocked from the Gulf, but they are perfect for kayaking, fishing, and peaceful waterfront living and it comes at a lower price point. So these are three completely different waterfront experiences, all within the same city. Fort Myers waterfront, by comparison, is very concentrated. The river, a few neighborhoods with canal access, and some communities that are near water, lakes, ponds. So all of it is real and all of it is valuable, but finite in a way that Cape Coral simply isn't. So here's the reality that no amount of development can change. You can't build more canals into Fort Myers. The land is already platted, the city is already built. What exists is what exists. Cape Coral's canal network took 65 years and an extraordinary amount of earth moving to create. Not something that you can just replicate. This is why I tell waterfront buyers that Cape Coral's canal homes, particularly those with direct Gulf access, are among the most defensible real estate values in Southwest Florida. Because you're not buying proximity to the water, you're buying scarcity. And scarcity is what holds value when the market's correct. All right, we've covered the size picture, the price picture, the hidden cost, the commute math, the lifestyle question, and the waterfront divide. Now I owe you the verdict I promised at the beginning. 4 buyer profiles, 2 cities. Here's the honest answer. I told you at the beginning of this video that I wasn't going to give you a cop-out answer. So here it is. There's no single winner. Okay, I'm just kidding. Let's talk about the buyer profile. There are 4 buyer profiles, and each of them has a city that objectively serves them better. Profile number 1, this is what I'm going to call the urban energy buyer. This is the buyer who moved to Florida because they wanted a warmer version of the city life that they're used to. They wanted walkability, things to be close. They want a bar around, a restaurant scene, cultural calendar, live theater, art walks, the feeling of something happening around them. So for this buyer, Fort Myers wins. The river district is real, the density is real, the infrastructure for a social, active city life is there, and it's growing. Profile number 2, we're going to call this the commuter buyer. This is the buyer who is working locally at Lee Health, FGCU, in the Daniels corridor, near the airport. They need to be near their job without grinding through a bridge crossing twice a day. For this buyer, Fort Myers wins again because proximity to the employment core, easy airport access, and established city utilities throughout make Fort Myers the practical choice for the working professional who isn't remote. Profile 3, the waterfront and boating buyer. Me. This is the buyer who came to Florida because of the water. They want to dock in their backyard. They want to leave the house by boat. They want the canal lifestyle. Weekend trips out to Sanibel, dinner at the waterfront restaurant, sunrise fishing from their own seawall. For this buyer, Cape Coral absolutely wins. It's not even close. No city in the world offers the waterfront to price ratio that Cape Coral does. And the canal access is not something Fort Myers is going to be building anytime soon. And our last profile, profile number 4, the value and lifestyle buyer. This is the remote worker, the retiree, the snowbird who has fully decoupled their living choice from their job. They want the most Florida lifestyle per dollar. Warm weather, outdoor living, water nearby, space, and a pace that actually feels like the move that they made. For this buyer, I'm going to say Cape Coral wins. The lifestyle premium you get for the price in Cape Coral is real. You're not paying for proximity to amenities. You're paying for a lifestyle that centers on water, nature, and the kind of quiet that people chase for decades before they actually find it. So here's my honest answer to the title question. Fort Myers wins if you're a local commuter, a city energy buyer, or someone who needs the widest possible menu of home types and price points. Cape Coral wins if you're buying for the water, buying for the lifestyle, buying for the value, or buying as a remote worker who wants Florida living at its most authentic. The wrong answer is picking one because of what you read in a Reddit thread or saw in a thumbnail. The right answer is knowing which of these 4 profiles is you and then letting that drive your decision. So let's recap what we covered. Fort Myers feels bigger because it's denser, but Cape Coral is actually the larger city by landmass and population. Fort Myers has a wide price spectrum for entry-level condos to luxury estates, and Cape Coral has the best waterfront to price ratio in the state. If you're buying in North Cape Coral, know your UEP assessment status before you make an offer. That $35,000 surprise has blindsided way too many buyers who didn't ask. The commute over the Caloosahatchee is real, and the waterfront divide between these two cities is not closable. Cape Coral's 400 miles of canals are an asset that you just can't replicate. And the verdict comes down to 4 buyer profiles, 2 cities, and knowing which one you are. So if you watch this whole video, you now know more about this market than most buyers who've already closed in it. That's not nothing. Go use that knowledge. And if you're relocating to Southwest Florida and you're still in research mode, our Cape Coral relocation guide I mentioned earlier is going to save you weeks of Googling. It covers neighborhoods, the canal systems, and the questions you should be asking before you buy. It's free, and the link is in the description below. If you're already local, already in Cape Coral or Fort Myers, and you're thinking about making a move, buying or selling, reach out to us. We'll tell you exactly what your property is worth in this market and what the right next move looks like for your situation. No pressure, no pitch, just a straightforward conversation with somebody who knows both sides of the river. Reach out anytime, and we'll see you in the next one.